Welcome to your IT class. So today we are going to continue with our session 1, that is introducing databases, and this is from our unit 3, that is database management system. So let's start our class for today. So before starting our today's class, let us do a small recap from the previous session. So if you can remember, in the previous session we had gathered knowledge about base, that is the database application program which we have from openoffice.org, and in base it offers many features like tables, forms, queries and reports in order to manage data in a database. Now not only in base, in every database you will find different database objects which you can refer to as tables, forms, queries and reports. In every database you will find these major database objects. And then we had also gathered knowledge that a table is a storage container which refers to storing data pertaining to single, it can be any object, subject or for any purpose. All right, so tables are what? These are storage containers in a database for storing data. Then we had gathered knowledge about the primary key, that is, it is a field which will uniquely identify each record in a table. All right, then the primary key, which consists of a combination of two or more fields or attribute, is known as a composite key or a composite primary key. That means, say for example, in a particular primary key field it has got duplicate values, so that particular field we cannot take as a primary key. So what we can do is we can combine the primary key field value with another field, okay, so which will have unique values. And what we can do, we can combine both the primary key field as well as the other field, and we can combine these two fields to be called as a composite key or as a composite primary key. Then we had also gathered knowledge that the keys which have unique values for each record, okay, but are not selected as a primary key, are called as the alternative keys. That means, say for example, in a particular table we have roll number field as well as we have admission number field, okay. So both these roll number field and the admission number field will have unique values, all right, but the roll number field is selected as a primary key, but the admission number field is not selected as a primary key. So that particular field, that is the admission number, can be called as a alternative key. That is the key which will have unique values for each record but is not selected as a primary key, is called as an alternative key. So here in this table, admission number field can be called as the alternative key. Then primary keys and both alternate keys together are called as candidate keys. Okay, so any field name which will have unique values which can become a primary key, that particular field values are called as candidate keys. All right, then in a table we have a field which is not the primary key in a table, in that particular table, but that but is a primary key in another table, then that key is called as a foreign key. Say for example, we have two tables, okay, say for example, in the first table we have roll number as a primary key, okay, and in the second table we have admission number as a primary key. So in the second table the admission number can be called as a foreign key, okay. So then we had also gathered knowledge that a table can have multiple foreign keys, but there can be only one primary key in a table. All right, so these are the different topics which we have covered in the last class. So let us come to the learning outcome of today's class. So the learning outcome of today's class is you will have knowledge on what are queries, okay, then forms, reports, all these are different database objects, and lastly the purpose of designing a database. That means what are the different steps we should keep in mind while designing a database. So let's start our class. So first of all, here we have queries, the first database object here. So what is a query? All right, so in order to find or retrieve, okay, the data which will meet the conditions which we specify, okay, so based on certain conditions which the users will give, we can find and retrieve data, extract data from a database, and including data also from multiple tables, that means from different tables, and we can create a query. So a query can also update, okay, and we can also delete multiple records at the same time, and we can perform certain predefined or custom calculations on our data. As you can see here, the definition of query is given over here. That is, query is a statement, or you can say a database object which will give us filtered data according to our condition and specifications. All right. Now, as you can see from example in the picture which is given here in the figure 1.4, that a query in a database. Now you can see that there are two tables there. The first table is the employees table and the second one is the department table. All right, now here you can see the query retrieves supervisor's details by fetching the names and employee ID from the employees table and department from the departments table. So here we are creating a query where we have taken two fields, that is the name and the employee ID from the employees table, and we have taken department field from the departments table. Okay, and we have taken three different field names from two different tables, and we have combined it into one particular table by creating a query. So that is how we can create a query. We can extract data from multiple tables into one particular table, and the output of a query is always given in the form of a table. So here you can see this is the third table which we get after combining the data from the first and the second table. The third table is the query output table. So that is how we find out queries in a database. All right, now let's go to the next topic. So the next topic here we have is forms. All right, now what are forms? Okay, forms, just like you fill up forms, same way here also in database we can fill up the forms. We can enter new data in a form. Now forms let us easily enter data in a database. Please see here that to easily view, okay, or enter and change data directly in a table, you can create a form. And when you open for form, base retrieves the data from one or more tables and displays it on the screen with the layout specified by you. That means we can create a form using the data source from the different tables which you have already created. Okay, say any query. Okay, from any query also you can create a form, or from any tables which you have already created in your database, already pre-existed tables, from there you can create a form. Okay, and it lets us easily view the data which we have entered in the table. Then we can again enter new data and we can change the data. So as we do any updation, any modification in the form, it will get automatically updated in the table as well. All right, then here you can see the definition of form is given over here, that a form is an interface in a user specified layout, and that lets users to view, enter, change data directly in the table. So as you enter new data here, you will see the new and data which you have updated, which you have entered in the form, will automatically get updated from which source table you have created the form. Okay, and you can specify the layout according to your own wish. Okay, so forms focus on only one record at a time, and they can display fields from multiple tables, pictures and more. So please remember that forms displays data at focuses on one record. That means one record can be viewed at a one time. Then accordingly you can go through the next record. Okay, accordingly one by one you can view all the different records which you have stored in your table. All right, so that is how we can create a form, and it lets us easily view, enter and change data, okay, directly in the table. And whatever updation or modification you do in the form, it will automatically get updated in the table as well. Okay, then next one we have is reports. Okay, our class database object, that is report. So to analyze our data or present in a certain way in print, we can create a report. Now you want to print your table which you have already created in your database. You want it in a printable format, so you can create that table as a report and you can print it out. So to analyze your data or to present it in a certain way in print, you can create a report. For example, you might print one report that groups the data and calculates totals, and another report with different data formatted for printing labels. Okay, so accordingly what you can do, you can create a report if you want any particular database object in a printable format. Say particular query you want to get as a printed layout, okay, in a print format. So you can create that particular query as a report and then you can print it out. So a report is an effective way to present data in a printed format, and it is a formal, presentable, printed document that leaves data in a formatted manner. So here the picture of a report is given over here, and you can see So this is a table of given over here, and you can see accordingly different records will be stored in a formatted manner, and then you can get a printout of the particular table department over here. Alright, then table displays many records at the same time, but you have to scroll to see the whole record, and you can't update data from one or more table at the same time, but you can do this in form very easily. So here in forms we can display all the records one by one at a in a very easy manner. Okay, and here you can see this is the picture of a report over here, as you can see, and this is the source table. The record is taken from the table department, and when you create the report from the when you create a report from the particular table department, and this is how your data will look like. It will not look like just like you have seen the table in the datasheet view. It will look in a different formatted manner, and this is how you will get the records in a printed format using a report. Alright, so this is the last database object. Now let us go to the next topic, that is designing a database. That is, we have different steps, okay, which we have to keep in mind while designing a database. Okay, so what are these? The purpose of the database. So we should know for what purpose we are going to design a database. Now we should know what information we want from the database. That is, we should determine what subjects we need to store facts about. That is the tables which we are going to create in a database, and what facts we need to store about each subject, that is the fields in the table. Okay, so all this we have to determine, we have to keep in mind beforehand before we start designing a database. Alright, the next one is determine the tables which we need. That is the structure of determining the tables which we need is the trickiest step. So while designing a table, we should keep these fundamental design principles in mind. That is, first of all, we should keep in mind that a table should not contain duplicate information, okay, or the information should not be duplicated between tables. Then each table should contain information about one subject. Say for example, we are creating a database, say known as students, and we have created two tables there, say for example academic details and personal information details. Okay, so in both the tables we should know what type of data we are going to store in it. Okay, so each table should contain information about one subject. Then next, third step is to determine the needs which we need, the fields which we need. So when sketching out the fields for each table, we should relate each field directly to the subject of the table, and we should at the same time include all the information which we need. Then the fourth one is to identify the fields or the fields with unique values in each record. That is the primary key. Now in each table in a database must include a field or a set of fields which will uniquely identify each individual record in the table. That is the primary key. So while we create a table, okay, which in each table of a database we must include a particular field which will uniquely identify each record in the table, and that is the primary key. The next one we have is determining the relationship between tables. Now we need to set up relationship among tables, okay, and the relationships can be set on the basis of common fields in tables. So we can create a relationship between two or more tables, and how we can create a relationship between the tables on the basis of the common fields, okay, in both the tables, that is the foreign key and the primary key in the two tables. Okay, that is how we can create a relationship, and we can combine the data from two or more different tables and combine into one particular table as a query output. Then redefine the design of the database. That after we have already created the tables, we have decided about the different fields. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to redefine the design of the database. That means we have to restudy the design of the database, and we have to see that if any flaws might remain. Okay, now if there is any flaws remaining in the database, any defects is there, so what we can do is, it is better to change the database design in the initial stages. Okay, so in the initial stages, in the early stages, we should redefine the database if there is any flaws, okay, any defect. Then later on, after we have filled the tables with data, so it is better to redefine or redesign the database if we find there is any defect in the database beforehand, before we fill the tables with datas. Okay. Then the last one we have is entering data and create other database objects. Now when we are satisfied that our table structure, okay, that is our database structure has met the design principles, then we can go ahead and accordingly we can add all our existing data to the tables, and we can create other database objects as well, like create a query, form and report. Okay, so this is the different steps which you should keep in mind while designing a database. All right, so today's class is only up to here. Now let us summarize the topics which we have covered today. So in today's class we had gathered knowledge that a query is what? Is a database object that gives us filtered data according to our conditions and specifications. Okay, so a query output you get in the form of a table, and you can get what? You can get the filtered data. That means you give conditions, okay, on a certain specified criteria, and that conditions will be filtered out, and you will get the filtered data in the form of a query output. Then we had gathered knowledge that a form is an interface in user specified layout which lets the users in order to view, enter and change data directly in the table. So through a form you can enter data, you can view data and you can change data. And as you change the data or enter the data in the form, you will see automatically the data will also get updated from which table you have taken the data in the form. Okay. Then we had also gathered knowledge about report, which is an effective way to present the data in a printed format. Now if you want a table or a query, okay, or form to be in a printed layout, in a printed format, you can use the report option, and it is a formal, presentable, printed document that lists data in a formatted manner. Then lastly, we had gathered knowledge about the different steps in designing a database. So first of all, we have to determine the purpose for what we are creating the database. Then we should determine the tables which we'll be needing in the database. We should keep in mind the fields which we are going to include in the tables. All right. Then we should also identify the which field, okay, or fields with unique values we will be taking as a primary key, okay, to which will uniquely identify each record in the tables. Then we should determine the relationship between the tables, okay. Then we have to refine the design of the database. We have to restudy the design of the database and see if there is any flaws or defect, so that we can correct it beforehand in the initial stages, and then later on when we will fill up the database with tables, okay, with data. So we have to restudy it beforehand. We have to correct it beforehand if there is any flaws. And then lastly, if we find that the database has met our design principles, then we can go ahead and we can enter data in the tables, okay, and then at the same time we can create other database objects as well, like forms, reports and queries. Okay, so this is all about our today's class. Thank you everyone. So after this class I have some home assignment for you in Google Classroom. Please check and kindly do, and at the same time keep learning. Okay, I'll be sending you the exit card link. Please do fill up the responses and submit to me. All right, thank you. Have a nice day.